business base with loan. So it's paramount that we understand what exactly are we doing? How do I ensure that I am profitable and all of that? So the question you first need to ask yourself is, in your business, what you are doing. Now, these are things you would have to ask yourself since we are not together to get direct answers. What you are doing right now, would you say it's innovative or is disruptive? Or are you just replicating what is already available? So take, for instance, I know listening to other sessions, there was somebody that said they want to sell television online. So the question is, in your selling of television, are you replicating a method you have seen somewhere? Or is it that you are going to be innovating a new method? Now, if you are going to be innovating a new method to sell your TV online, is it going to disrupt what is already available? Because remember, at the end of the day, whether or not you make profit depends on sales. And how much you are able to sell is practically dependent on how much or how well people receive whatever it is you are doing. Now, for those of us that are going to be innovating, there are three key things you need to ask yourself. What you are going to be doing, is it something that is sustainable? Now, it's very important that for those of us who are coming into other area of businesses like fashion and the rest, where you are thinking, okay, I want to start a new trend and all of that. The question is, this trend you are hoping to start, is it something that you can actually sustain? That's option one. Option two, what you are trying to do, your kind of market, where do they fall in? So for those of us that are already in business, when you look at your customer segment, where do they fall in? Let me take an example for the guy that said he wants to sell TV. The kind of TV you are looking at selling, where would you place it? Is it amongst the A-grade TV or is it amongst the very low-class TV? Let me take an example. I remember years ago when there is this popular brand of freezer called them as a Thermocool. They are Thermocool freezer. Now, you would realize that in Nigeria, Thermocool is not so much of like a big name, though yes, it's one of the big names. But when you go to countries like India, Thermocool is like super big. Now, how did Thermocool make it so well in countries like India? They realized that in the first few years when they opened up, still talking about the low-end disruptive, when they opened up in India, they realized they were making sales for the very first few years. Then after a while, their sales stopped. Like when I say stop, meaning that volume reduced. So there was now the issue of why are we no longer making sales? And about 2-3 years of their own internal studies, they realized that because of the kind of product they had in the market, only the high income earners could buy it. Now, once the high income earners already had 1 or 2 fridges, I mean, you're not going to buy a third fridge just for the sake of buying, or a fourth, fifth, sixth fridge. So the next thing they had to do was, how can we have a low-end disruption that those at the bottom parts can actually come into this space of buying fridges? They came out with another product called something Jota Cool. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that way, something Jota Cool. Now, Jota Cool is a small fridge that looks just like a regular big flask. All these are big flasks that we use for parties and all of that. That is the exact size. And what they were able to do with that is because they realized that majority of the poor Indians wanted something that would just keep their things cool from night till the following morning, 1. 2, they did not want to spend a fortune on it. 3, they needed something that did not consume so much power. 4, because they lived in small houses, they needed something they could move around easily. Now, they realized that immediately they released their products, their sales went up immediately. So in your own product or in your own business, you need to ask yourself, what I am trying to do. Do I need to come in little? Do I need to come in and try to disrupt at the bottom? Let me take another example that I believe most of us will probably understand better. When we had the likes of Techno and all of that coming into the country, before Techno came into the country, the top brands were things like Samsung and Nokia. Now, when the likes of China phones were coming into the country, you realize that they came in as a low-end disruptive. By default, as Nigerians, we had this mindset of they are not as good as the top brands. We understood that. They may not serve you as long as the top brands. However, they still allow me to communicate effectively without taking so much money out of my pocket. So as an entrepreneur, you need to start looking at your brand and ask yourself the question, the products that I have for the market, what I am trying to do, is it something that should come in as a low-end disruptive? Or finally, is it something I need to create a whole new market for? Meaning what you are bringing in has never been done. So if it has never been done, I need to start thinking of how to create a complete market for it. Now, quickly, let me just say this quickly. As a businessman, whether you are a sole proprietor or limited or whatever it is, you need to remember that people buy your business to try to solve a problem that they have. So for example, the only reason I will go out to buy a cloth is because there is a nakedness I need to cover. So the question is, what is your business actually offering? Now, from the Nice House standpoint, your business is either a product or a service. So what product are you actually selling? What service are you actually selling? It's very important. So if you have a paper somewhere, write it down, because we are still going to come back to this again during business plan. What product are you actually selling? What are you actually selling? Now, if, for example, I think I heard somebody earlier say they want to go into Gary processing. Now, if you are writing down that what you are going to be selling is Gary, that is not enough. That is not enough. What makes your Gary different from the Gary, what is it called, on the roadside? Why would I want to buy from you? So what exactly is your Gary helping me solve? I don't know if that makes any sense. So you need to take time to look at your business and ask yourself, what am I trying to solve? Now, every business must have what we call the correlation and causality point. I will still come back and discuss this more so that we would look at our pricing, because most of the time I realize that as young entrepreneurs, we tend to have this mindset of, or as entrepreneurs generally, you tend to have this mindset of creating your price and brand in a bubble. Like, oh, you make your business plan and you assume in 2 years I am here, in 5 years I am the #1 in the world. So one of the things we are going to be looking at is your brand. There is a need to create a brand. Or before then, let's start from the bottom, the job to be done. So we need to know, what job does your product or service help the customers to do? What job are you trying to do for a customer? Towards the end, I'll try and see if we can take 1 or 2 questions so we can actually get feedback. So for example, you want to export, as somebody talked about them being a cooperative and they want to export some stuff. The question is, what are you trying, what does that help the buyer to solve? 2, what experience are you leaving for your customers? Now, let me give an example. So let's say there is somebody that wants to start a salon. Now, you realize that most people say things like, oh, what makes me unique is that my price is cheap. Now, this is the reality. Having the cheapest price cannot be your selling point, because if your price being cheap is your selling point, it means that for me to kick you out of the market, I only need to make my own price cheaper. We will still talk more about this. In business, we have what we call a nuisance factor, where somebody else will just decide to have a product to run you out, even if they run at a loss. I'll give you a perfect example. For those of us that follow the news in Lagos, sometimes back, the biggest transporter in Lagos with motorcycle was Go-Kada. Now, all it took for Go-Kada to be relegated to the background was for OPay to come on board and reduce their price. And because I remember when OPay started, they were charging as low as 15 naira for any location you want to go to on their bike. And you realize that before you know what was happening, lots of customers gravitated from Go-Kada to OPay. That Go-Kada now had to start doing deliveries and all of that. So what experience are you living for your customer? Next, you must be able to do what we call an integration. And now an integration is after I have purchased your product, after I have purchased your service. Now, my experiences should be such that anytime I have that feeling of that experience, I must remember you. Let me look for an example. So let's imagine you are into hospitality and I came into your hotel for the first time, and in your hotel, for example, probably at the gate, I was welcomed and given a bouquet of flowers and all of that. It's an experience. Now, you realize that anywhere I go to that I see that kind of flowers, there is an integration because now I remember your company. So there is an experience that gets integrated that anytime I feel that experience anywhere else, it reminds me of your company. Anywhere I get that experience of your product, it reminds me of your company. And finally, there is a need to think of being a brand. Whatever product or service you provide as an entrepreneur, you must find a way to become a brand. People can forget a product or a service, but people do not forget a brand. So at the end of the day, we need you to move from being profit-driven to value-driven. From profit-driven to value-driven. So that is just the base. So we quickly rush to the second one. Now, I know for some of us who probably have been in business a while and we've had some failed projects and all of that. So here I want to look at failed rights. Now, for all of us here, I want to assume for those of us that have been in business, we have had what we call business canvas model before now. Now, if you don't, please take a piece of paper. Let's quickly run through some activities together because this is going to help a lot in trying to figure out what you want to do. Here, I am using an example of a maize and an organic poultry production, just as an example. In your business, now, as a businessman, let me say this generally, it's important you understand that you and your business are not the same person. So if the name of your business is Samson Limited and your name is Samson, in the eyes of the law, Samson and Samson Limited are two different people. Very important. Samson is different from Samson Limited. Now, we want to talk about Samson Limited, which is the company. As a company, there are key partners that you must work with for you to be able to function. How do I mean? You know, earlier, when the prof from NISA was talking, he talked about the fact that out of the money you are going to collect for loan, all the funds will not come to you. Some of the money will go to like your vendors, the guys you need to buy your input supplies from. So in that business that you are going to be doing or that you're already doing, who are your key partners? Who are those people that you need to depend on to run your business? Who are those people that you know that without them, you do not have a business? So you need to list them somewhere. It's important that you properly highlight. So for example, for a maize farmer, you probably need, or a poultry farmer, you need your logistics company, you need your sales agent, you need your feed mills that will help you compound your feed, you need your cold storage provider, you need the farmers that would help you produce if you're just an off-taker. So there is a need to know who are my key partners. Number two, there is a need to understand your key activities. What is the real activity that your business is going to be doing? Now, as a business, it's important you try to differentiate your core area of strength from what other people can do for you. So, for example, you are coming in to start gari processing. If your core strength is just to fry the gari, you may have to give the part of peeling the cassava to somebody else. You may have to give the grinding of the cassava to somebody else. You may have to give the growing of the cassava to somebody else so that you are able to focus on your own strength, which is your own key activity. Now, for your key activity, you need to know the key resources that you need. So the difference between your key partners and your key resources is your key resources is what you need to perform your own part of the job. Your key partners are the ones that do what you are not going to do. So they do what would enable you to do your job. I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes any sense if we are still together. Next, there is what we call value proposition. Now, value proposition is what value are you giving to your customers? Now, let me say this, which is really important. If I pay, for example, let's take an example, I go to a salon to cut my hair. Now, your value proposition as a barber cannot be, I cut your hair, fine. Why? That is what I am paying you to do. Now, your value is something that you are giving to your customer that the customer is not necessarily paying for directly. You may have had the charges hidden somewhere, but the customer is not paying for it directly, which means if they pick up their invoice and look at what they are paying for, they are not going to see you charging them for that particular thing. So you need to think of what value do I have to give to this customer that would make me different from other people. Then there is a need to have what we call proper customer relationship, because at the end of the day, the success or failure of your business is dependent on availability of customers. So what is your customer relationship? Then you should understand your channels of sales. We'll still talk more about this in the future, but you need to understand how do you sell your product. If you are a service provider, how do you get your service to your customer? How does the customer get to access you? How do they know where you are? Then you need to know your customer segment. You need to know who are your premium customers, who are your loyal customers, and who are those customers that are just there to make inquiry but never buying. You need to know them. Then you need to know which of your customers promote you a lot. These are the first segment of customers. Then you also need to know your cost structure. So as a company or as a business, you should know which part of my business, which one brings in more money, what percentage brings in, what part of my business brings in the highest percentage, and what part of my business does not bring in so much money. Then you also need to look at your revenue stream. These are things we will still look at. Then for those of us that are just starting, that's why I added this. For those of us that just want to start a business and you say you want to use loan to start, you should be able to brainstorm, have a rough sketch. Now, try to discuss. Now, when we say discuss your business with people, do not discuss your business with people that are not the customer for your business. So, for example, I want to start selling makeup, and I go and gather men who don't have need of makeup. Whatever feedback they give to me would not represent what is actually going to happen in the market. So when it comes to discussing your idea before you run with it, it's important that the guys that you are discussing your idea with are a prototype or a mirror of your real customer base. So if, for example, I want to sell rice in cup, one cup of rice or 1 cup of gari, I should not go and start asking the guys that will buy rice in bags, because the feedback you will get from them would not represent the actual reality of the market. Then have your adjustment from the discussion, then do a prototype. Do not start so you have probably collected 7 million naira loan as a startup. Don't run with all your money at once. Prototype. Get to understand whether, okay, what I thought it was, is that what it actually is? See the feedback, try to understand, evaluate, and then you can then make adjustments. Now, another thing again we must also look at is critically look at your business. What is the strength of your business? Now, the strength of your business, to identify the strength of your business, you are looking at what advantage or edge do you have over your competitors in that area. So, for example, you want to start selling gari in Abuja, or you want to start selling gari in Katsina, and you are going to look at a brand that is selling in Lagos. No, that's not your competitor, because the guy in Lagos is not coming to Abuja to sell. So in that place where you want to sell, what is your competitive edge over those people? That is your strength. Now, when we say weakness, your weakness is what is the edge that your competitors have over you? Meaning, what is the thing that will make your customers prefer your competitors' product to your product? Is it the packaging? Is it the branding? Is it the quality? Is it the location? Probably, okay, maybe you have your shop on the 5th or 7th floor. Meanwhile, your competitor's shop is on the ground floor. So which means that when people come into the shopping complex, it is easier for them to assess your competitor than to assess you. That in itself is a weakness. So these are the things we look at when it comes to weakness. So it's not about, I don't have enough money. Then the next thing is, what are the opportunities that exist in the value chain? So when we say opportunities, we are looking at what are the things that you are looking at that you know that these are gaps that are not yet filled up, that you hope that, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I can grow and fill up these gaps. So you have to look at your business and say, I want to start Gary processing right now, but I know that there is a gap that there are people that want this thing processed with a little bit of maybe stevia or sugar added, or they want some granola that they can use it to eat it. So you are seeing an opportunity somewhere. Or you are a fashion designer and you are saying, the opportunity I am seeing is a lot of tailors, because of the fact that we are trying to push a whole lot of things online. People find it hard to try to get the accurate measurement without them being with the tailor one-on-one. So the opportunity I'm seeing is, I want to develop an app that once the person uses my app to snap themselves, it gives their accurate measurements. That is an opportunity you're already seeing. As a barber, the opportunity I am seeing is people do not know what hairstyle that will fit them. So I want to create a software that when they come and I snap their picture, so that again is an opportunity that you are seeing. Is the threat. So I will leave the portfolios where we look at what business owner. Now, the next business owner, you need to be very sincere with yourself as a business owner. That looking at my business, you know your quality of what you are producing. Now, in quality, your quality is either low or high. As a business owner, you know that to yourself, that the truth is my quality is low or my quality is high. Now, in price, your price can either be low or your price can be high. Now, on the screen, I have the quadrant that we use in trying to explain this. If your quality is low, most likely your price should be low, so that you are under what we call the economic area of pricing. So that, take for instance, you remember when the likes of Chinese phone, all this bird phone and all of that came into the country, their quality was low, their price was low. So which means that those in the low economic strata were able to buy their products. Now, there are times where your quality is high, but you start with a low price. That happens when you are trying to penetrate a new market. So you want people to try your product out first. Most of the time you realize that big companies call that promo. They will say, we are doing promo pricing. So it's a way of penetrating into the market. So you have high quality goods, but you deliberately start with a low price, so that for the first maybe 1 or 2 months, people get to know you, then you go to your normal price. Now, there are times where you have low quality, but you start with a high price. That only works when you know you are one of the first persons in that area that owns that thing. Take, for instance, when this whole COVID-19 started and people started bringing out this face mask that looks like a shield, the first set of people that brought the face masks that looked like a shield were selling for like 1,000, 2,000 naira. Why? They were the first people that brought it to the market. But as more people started bringing it to the market now, I think they're selling about 500 naira. So there is that benefit of being the first person to the market. You are the first, so your quality can be low, but your price is high. But you understand that once a lot of people come into this market, my price has to go down. Then finally, we have the premium pricing, where you know your quality is top-notch, so your price is also top-notch, like we have with Apple products. Now, when it comes to pricing principle, again, we are still going to discuss this more in the future. There are 5 major pricing principles that we look at. First is what we call the cost-based, basket-based pricing. Now, this is basically your everyday market, where if you enter the market, the person sells based on how much it costs them to produce it. They just add a little profit. So if it costs me 200 naira to get this thing, I sell it for 220 naira and make 20 naira profit. Now, this is where most businesses operate from. Now, this is not so good in the long run if you are going to stay long in business. I'm going to still take time to discuss this in the future, because when you are doing cost-based, most of the time, you forget to calculate what we call your sunk cost. You forget to calculate your storage cost, which means if I buy a phone for 500 naira and I am selling it at 600 naira, the question is, that phone spent about 3 months in my shop before selling. Did I remember to put the price that that phone spent in? Because that space that the phone is taking in your shop is actually supposed to be paid for by the person paying for it. We will come back to that in the future and still look at it. Then next, we have what we call psychological sale. Now, psychological pricing is based on, because your customer assumes this is better, they are willing to pay more. Because the customer assumes this is cheaper, they don't want, or this is not as good as the other product, they don't want to pay so much. I'll give an example. If you go into a salon, I'm using salon as a guy, or for women, when you go to your hairdressing salon, when you go into a salon and there are air conditions everywhere, ties everywhere, the place is super beautiful, automatically, psychologically, you are prone to want to pay more because you feel this place deserves the amount. But if you go to another salon where the fan is not even working well, the floor, they just put carpet that has even torn or tattered carpet. Now, the person that is making the hair there may be better than the guy in the well-touched up salon. But because the place is not looking so fine, psychologically, you don't expect them to charge you more than the other guys. So there is what we call psychological pricing. Now, this is very important when it comes to your branding. So if, for example, I am selling ordinary puff-puff, if I bring the puff-puff to you inside a glass and I'm eating it, cocoa, you probably want to pay 10 or 20 naira per puff-puff. But if I package it well inside one very fine nylon, and I put some health tips and all of that on the nylon, or even inside a fine takeaway pack, I might be able to charge more. Now, the product may be exactly the same thing, but psychologically, you are already in your mind saying, this should cost more. I'll give an example, like the one on the screen, Apple and Samsung. You realize that when you look at Apple phone, some of their softwares that are inside the Apple phone comes from Samsung. But for a typical Nigerian, as a typical Nigerian, we assume by default, Apple is better than Samsung. Samsung is better than whatever Techno wants to bring out, irrespective of the technology behind the phone itself. So we have what we call psychological pricing. Then we have what we call anchor pricing principle. Now, anchor pricing principle is when you anchor your price based on another company's pricing system. So take, for instance, I want to sell, what will I use? I'm looking for a product to use. I want to sell rice, or I want to sell television. Can we use televisions, for example? I want to sell television, the man that talked about TV. And the TV brand you want to sell is Brom or Scanfrost or LG. Now you realize that maybe on that your area, in that your area where you want to sell the TV, there are like 4 or 5 people also selling TVs, and you are all selling the same products. Now, you will notice that even if where you got your product is maybe 1/4 of the price, when you get to the market, you will want to anchor your pricing based on how they are selling. You don't want to be so cheap that people start thinking your product is inferior. But you don't want to be too expensive either. So you need to know, in my kind of business, should I go for an anchor type of pricing, or should I go for the psychological type of pricing? Next, we have what we call the loss leader pricing system. Now, loss leader pricing system is if what you are going to be producing, there is already a big brand producing that thing. So let's take, for example, tomorrow I want to start a process of doing soft drinks. Imagine tomorrow I say I want to start doing soft drinks. Now, if I want to start selling soft drinks, you agree with me that there is already a, what's the word now? There is already big brands that are selling soft drinks. Now, if I make my drink more expensive than their drink, there is a high probability I am not going to sell. So if, for example, I start selling Coca-Cola of, I think it's 60 cl, I think 60 cl goes for, I'm not sure, I think maybe 100 naira. Now, I now make my own brand of cola drink and I want to start selling it for 500 naira. Nobody would want to buy. Why? Because there is already a leader in the industry that people are going to use my pricing quality and quantity to compare with. So if I am coming into an area or a sector, if you are a businessman, and what you are doing right now, there is a leader in that area, that you may need to use their price as an anchor for what you want to do. Then the last part of pricing principle is what we call the premium bundle. Premium bundle is, that's very common during Christmas period and all of that, where they tell you, buy 2, maybe go and buy 2 things and you get the 3rd one free. So premium bundle is very important. It's a strategic way of selling something, a product that you have that people do not seem to buy. So for example, one of the guys I used that recently was this guy's the Mini-Me. All these guys that makes Mini-Me chin-chin and all of that. When they wanted to start selling the 50 naira chin-chin, what they did was they were selling their big branded product. Then they will add the free 50 naira chin-chin inside the product. That way, when you buy your normal big product, you see the 50 naira, you taste it. Now you start longing for, oh, when will this be available in the market? So for example, you are doing gari already, and you have your 25 kg gari. Now, it's from cassava, you want to start bringing out starch to sell. So you can now have your starch added inside that bundle, such that when I buy your gari, I see a small sachet of starch. And I test the starch. So in the future, when it becomes available as a standalone product, I am much more likely to buy. Now, next, there is what we call money chart. Now, I know for some of us, we hate when we see money chart, we are like, I don't want to understand all this, what's it called, how money moves. As a businessman, you cannot do away with it. So here, for example, I used myself, my own personal company as an example. You need to know in everything that you do with your company, what gives you the most money. So your money chart, so you may need to sit down and look at the different activities you are involved in. So for example, we have farm produce that we sell. That gives us the bulk of the money, the profitability of the company, the bulk of the income. Farm setup is number 2. Farm consultancy is distant number 3. Going for speaking event is distant number 4. So that automatically tells me where we need to put more effort as a company. I am not going to be putting so much effort on speaking events that gives only 8% of the company's income and neglect farm produce sales that gives 44%. So you need to look at your own company and see what gives us money to know how to work best around it. What will be taken under mindset looking at now is the mindset reorientation as a business owner. Mindset reorientation as a business owner. I said earlier that this, which is very, very important, you and your business are not the same person. You need to develop your capacity as the head of whatever of your company. There is a need to develop your capacity. You should know what you know very well. So for example, you are going to go into Gary processing. Understand what Gary processing is about. Develop your capacity. It's very, very important. Then I said, if you need to employ somebody that is an expert at an area, let the expert have the say. Let the person that is an expert at an area make decisions as an expert. So don't say, okay, you are the expert and the expert is telling you, for example, oh, for cassava people that want to do Gary TME, 419 is not the best cassava to use for this kind of Gary. Let's buy this other kind of cassava. And you are like, no, 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 no. I have read from so on. It's important you allow experts make the expert decisions. Number two, as a business owner, develop your integrity. Develop your integrity. If your explanations are becoming too much to your customer, that is a height of mediocrity already coming in. So you need to develop your integrity. If you tell the person, I will be there by 4, it should be 4. You are a Gary processor, your Gary will be ready by 6, it should be 6. If it is not going to be 6, say it and let it be plain as the truth. Develop your integrity. Number 3, develop your sincerity. Develop your sincerity. Be sincere. So if it is blue, it is blue. If, for example, you want to get a job, they say, come and supply 40 tons of Gary, and you know you are not the one that will supply it alone. Make it clear. I am not supplying this alone. I will supply this with Lagbaja and so and so. However, don't worry, I take responsibility for whatever issues or faults they would have. Develop your sincerity. If you are telling your customer, this thing that I am giving to you is A+, let it be that anywhere they take it to, it is A+. Then number 4, hate covetousness. Work within the limit of what you are building. Don't be about other people's, oh, I must succeed like this guy. I must do like this guy. No. Know your limits. Understand your limitation. Understand your path. It is very, very important in business, because the reality is, as you grow in business, lots of opportunities are going to start coming. You must understand that not every opportunity is your opportunity. So not every door that is open is meant for you. There are opportunities that will come, but it is not for you. Understand your path. Hate covetousness. So for example, you are into Gary and somebody comes tomorrow and say, they said the next big thing now is yam processing. And you dump Gary and start doing yam. The next thing now is export of pepper. You dump that and you bring in pepper. You are going to have everything all modeled up. Now, I know somebody is probably thinking, what if in my case, I have 3 or 4 produce that I want to do at once that are very, very good? That is awesome, but don't start the 4 at a go. Try to grow them brand after brand. One of the richest women in the world is Oprah Winfrey. Now you realize that she did not build all her brands at the same time. Build them step by step. Let a product already have its own traction, such that on its own, it can direct and sell itself before you pick up the second, the third, the fourth, and all of that. I hope that makes sense. Next, we will now look at what we call the Porter forces. Earlier, when I was speaking, I said, when we talked about traits, I said I was going to take time to discuss this. There are 5 Porter forces that are very important you understand in your business, because whether or not you are going to be able to pay back your loan when you say you will pay back will depend on one of these 5 forces. What is going to happen to your business in 4 years, in 5 years, in 10 years depends on these Porter forces. Now, the number 1 Porter force that you must look at in relation to your business is the threat of new entry. In that business that you are doing, how easy is it for somebody to come in and start it? So for example, let me use the cassava man again that wants to go into garri processing. I'm sure we all know that in Nigeria, if there is a business that is doing well, before you know what is happening, everybody wants to come into that business. So if, for example, the man that wants to do garri processing, you start your garri processing today in Abuja, let's say Kuje in Abuja. Now, you know that once your garri processing, people say that you are making good money from your garri. The question you need to ask yourself is, how easy is it for somebody else to quickly come into this business? Because the easier it is for me to replicate your process and duplicate your results, the easier it is for your business to be pushed aside. I don't know if that makes any sense. If it is easy for me to replicate your process and duplicate your result, it means that your business lifeline is under threat from day one. So you must start looking at your business and asking yourself, how do you structure your business processes in such a way that it is not easy for people to replicate? How do I structure my product in such a way that it is not easy for people to duplicate my products? So you might be able to replicate my process, but you are not duplicating my products. Because if your product can be easily duplicated, it means that it is easy for me to push you out of the market. I don't know if I'm making any sense. So the first portal force you need to look at as it relates to your business is the threat of new entry. How easy is it for people to come into my kind of business? Can they easily come in and become kings of the business? Let me use, I'm trying to look for an example that I can use. For those of us that follow entertainment, there used to be, I don't know, let me use the word used since it's still alive. There are these musicians, they used to call them, I think, Marvelous Benji or something, if I'm not wrong. There used to be this dance that reigned one time called Garala, Big Garala, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well, that was brought up by Marvelous Benji. But the guys that made the dance popular were the likes of Daddy Shoki. So when we now say, oh, Garala dance, the people that come to our head are the Daddy Shokis. Now, which means that the process of the dance and the product of the dance was easy for people to replicate. And the product was easy for them to get. So in no time, the guy that originated it was no longer the person getting the accolades, but rather the guys that made it much more popular got the accolades. Same thing happens in business. There is another example I can think of, again in music. I can't remember the guy's name. There is a musician that sounds so much like R. Kelly that whenever the guy releases a song, R. Kelly, back in the days before his scandal, trends even more. The next portal force that we must look at is suppliers' power. You know, when we were discussing earlier, we talked about the fact that you need to know your key partners. Now, if your business requires a supplier for you to get before you can do your activity, then it's important you recognize that your suppliers have big power over your business. So for example, the man that wants to do cassava and garri, your supplier is the cassava seller. Now, what that simply means is this: if I want to push you out of business, all I need to do is go and offer more money to the guys that supplies you cassava, and you are in trouble. So as the owner of the business, you need to ask yourself, what guarantee do I have with my suppliers to ensure continual supply? What guarantee is there? Can I have a legal document to keep us bound as it relates to price, as it relates to supply, as it relates to logistics to get it to me? That is a big thing you need to look at in the area of your business. Oh, for example, you are in hospitality. Who are the suppliers of the things you use in your hospitality business? The guys that bring the water, the guys that brings the drink, the guys that do the cooking and all of that. Is there a way to guarantee that they keep supplying to you even if there are competitors that have bigger or better buying power? Number 3 portal force that you must look at is buyer's power. Your buyers also have power. Now, this is even more so if you are selling to a structured market. So, for example, the man that wants to do pure water business, I think somebody talked about water business. Now, you say, okay, I want to start doing water that will be branded in the name of company. That is my whole business plan. That is what I want to do. That's my business model. Now, it means that your buyer has the power, because if you brand your product in their name and they refuse to pick up, you are in debt. So what do you have as a leverage over your buyers to ensure that the power does not totally rest on them? I don't know if that makes any sense. I remember, I think, was that early this year or late last year, there was a scandal around the guy that sells perfume in Abuja. And when the scandal broke out, what happened? The buyers all agreed that they were no longer buying. They started destroying their products. It was so bad that the owner of the franchise had to go online to start begging people and apologizing. Why? Because the buyers have the power in his business. Next is, under the portals forces, is substitution. Substitution, meaning that product that you are selling, that thing that your business is all about, what is the substitute for your buyer? So you are selling Gary. What is the substitute for Gary for your buyer? Because you need to understand that remember we said at the beginning that buyers or your customers do not necessarily buy because of you. They buy because what you are selling has a function it can help them perform. They buy your product or your service because there is something it can enable them to do. So that service or product that you are selling, what is the possible substitute available to your customer? It is important that you understand it, because whatever thing they can use to substitute it becomes an option for them that can take you out of business. I don't know if I'm making any sense. I don't know if you understand. Then the 5th portal force is competitive rivalry. So let me take an example with this competitive rivalry. Right now, you are in your EDI center taking your lecture from the comfort of your house or your office. Now, there are other EDI centers available that you have to go to physically. What is the competitive advantage that now has over others? It gives you liberty to take your lecture in your house. 1. 2, it even gives you the liberty that you can come back and re-listen to the lecture at your pace. So the lecture may be over and you feel, oh, the facilitator was too fast. Let me play it at my pace and listen to it. And I think I also heard that it's even downloadable, which means you can even download it and have it on your device and listen to it again and again. So, which means what Noun has been able to do is they have created for themselves an edge. So anybody now as an EDI center that says we want to compete must first and foremost be able to meet these basics before they can say, okay, now we want to compete. I hope that makes sense under your portal forces. Then whatever product or service you are going to be using, we have 4 basic product pillars that you must consciously work on. There are 4 major basic product pillars that you must work on, whether product or service. Now, these are things you must have internally. Number 1, your product must have a measurable way of determining satisfaction. So that your product or service, you know there is something you want to ensure the user gets out of it. You must have a way of measuring. So take, for instance, there are some places you go and buy things online and they will have a feedback form. You go to some places for service like a hotel and all of that, there is a feedback form. You must have a way to get feedback, to measure, to ensure that the satisfaction you had that you projected is actually what the customer is getting. Two, you must be able to ensure cost effectiveness. You must be able to account for every little thing that goes into that product or service. You must be able to account for every cost, every sacrifice, every time. We must be able to bring it into Naira and Kobo. So you have to sit down to listen to a customer. We must be able to put a price on every time spent. Next, you must have a way of ensuring high satisfaction every time, especially for those of us in service. And finally, you must try to create multiple channels for your products. Your product should not be something that can only be accessed through a single channel. You must try to create multiple channels that people can access your product with to have good product pillars. To have good product pillars. So gradually we're coming to an end. Now I will quickly look at the checklist. So the checklist are things you need to do to ensure that you have successful entrepreneurial journey. Now, for some of us, you may realize that, during the course of this orientation that I have made mistakes. You can always correct your mistakes and moving forward, ensure you do the right thing. Now, 10 things that I would want us to do continually. One, you must always reach out to your customers. It is important. You should understand the buying pattern of your customers. So you have a customer that used to buy Gary from you every weekend and they have stopped buying. Reach out. Call, send a text message, whatever it is you need to do, reach out to your customers. Number two, find new market for your existing products. So don't just be comfortable with, I already have 1,000 people buying. No, try to find new markets. Try to get new markets. Three, try to build a network base for your business. So I always say this, if you are into Gary production, you must have other Gary producers in your contact list. If you are into television sales, you should have other television sellers in your contact list. You must network with people that are in the same business that you are doing. Because when you network with people that are in your own kind of business, it is going to help you to know, number one, what you don't need to pay for, what you can pay for later, and what you can pay for now. Especially for those of us that will be taking a loan for agriculture. You realize that most newbies in agriculture spend money on things they can pay for later or don't even need to pay for, just because they are working alone. So there is a need to network your business, network your business to other people doing similar business. Then, number four, you must always give value. Remember what I said earlier? Your value cannot be the product or the service that people are paying you to do. So, for example, I am coming to meet you to sew cloth for me, and you've sewn the cloth very well, and you say you've provided value. No, you've not provided value. What would have been the alternative, to sew the cloth wrongly? No. Your value is something that when I was paying, you did not charge me for it directly. I remember there are some salons you go to, when you get there, you came to cut your hair. Once you sit down, they will offer you drink. They will not tell you to pay for the drink. But the reality is that drink they are giving to you has been built into the cost of cutting your hair. But that drink in itself is a value. Why? Because I did not pay extra for it. So you must be able to create value in your business. Your value is your differentiation point. Number five, keep control of your vision as a businessman. You know the vision of your company. Keep control of it. Remember I said earlier, opportunities would always spring up. You need to know not every opportunity aligns with your vision. So there are opportunities that will come up and you realize this is not about my vision. Let it go. Let it slide. I don't know if that makes any sense. Number 6, understand the power of brand. Beyond selling a product, beyond selling a service, build a brand. Build a brand. Be super concerned about building a brand. Number 7, focus on what is good for your business. So, for example, you are into Gary. Now, you know other guys that are doing Gary with you. And they start telling you, this is what I am doing. This is good. That is good. And you realize that they are all trying things that are really doing well for them. Now, you have tried some of these things in the past that did not work for you. Don't go ahead to replicate it because it is now working for them. Focus on what is good for your business. Focus on what is good for your business. Then always maintain your quality control. Don't let your quality drop. Maintain your quality control. Number 9, set your product apart. Set your product apart. Always push for differentiation. If I take your Gary and I take other Gary, I should be able to differentiate your Gary from others. Very important. As a matter of fact, as a Gary seller, if I bring your Gary and other 10 people Garys to you, can you differentiate your own product and say, this is my own? Set your product apart. And finally, take ownership. Remember, it is your business. It is your business. It is your loan. Now is not going to help you pay for your loan. I am not going to help you pay for your loan. So take ownership of your business to ensure that at the end of the day, you are successful. To ensure that at the end of the day, you are successful. Thank you for your time.